I would like to hand over to Leo.
Hi everybody, my name is Leo. I'm from Newcastle School of Education, and this presentation I am critical thinking and
Leo, sorry, can I just slightly interrupt at a moment? If you could just stand a little bit closer, perhaps to your microphone. I think there's a number of people struggling to pick up the level of your audio, if that is okay.
Let me see if I can move my microphone here. Can people hear me now?
That sounds much better.
This is better. Okay. Okay, let's start again. So, Leo from Teacher Education, I want to share with you critical reflection as a pedagogically powerful tool to explore expertise in teaching in higher education. I am originally from Colombia, and that's why I have a funny accent. And I have been in the UK for 14 years, and I consider myself half Geordie. The image that you see there is the River Tyne, seen from my flat. Okay, let's start with, I'm just going to reinforce a couple of points. I mean, I think we need to acknowledge the idea of dual expertise in teaching is the combination of subject knowledge, but also pedagogy. So knowledge, strong knowledge in education. And from that, I think we can summarize the points of Shulman with the pedagogical content knowledge as the amalgamation of content knowledge and pedagogical knowledge. And what we do in teacher education is use critical reflection to enable that. So let me elaborate that a little bit more. Okay, so I think I want to pay attention here to the idea of transformation and translation, which is when experts in a subject come to teach and they want to translate their, again, experience and expertise to make it pedagogically powerful for their students. So my job is to help them create learning experiences. And I think that there is an important emphasis here on learning, because in a way, the fact that we're teaching doesn't mean that learners are learning. And that's when critical reflection can be used for enabling that process. One of the strategies that we use in the school is something called the loop input. Woodward posits that as one form of experiential learning. What we do is we don't talk about pedagogy, we model pedagogy. And what that means is that we have trainees in the classroom experiencing an array of strategies, activities, and resources we then use to reflect, analyze, and then potentially adapt for their own classrooms. I'm going to pay again emphasis here on the idea of analysis, because they're analyzing that as students, as the people who have just had the experience. We also need to have that idea of how am I going to adapt this for classroom. So I think this is when, again, the idea of translation from experience onto the next, their future is quite important. In my experience, teachers model their pedagogy on their experience as students. So in a way, coming back to the idea of array and diversity is quite important here. Again, coming back to my previous point in terms of experience, the more experiences, the more pedagogies they are exposed to and experience, the more tools, I would say, they can develop practically. So I think it's quite important for us to step outside our boundaries within subject specialisms and explore. We do have trainees from various disciplines sharing, and I think that's quite powerful, again, not being too niche. And I appreciate the points made, say, on pedagogical content knowledge in a subject area, such as maths, for instance, that there is a subject knowledge interest there, but also stepping outside that, and if maths teachers go and see teachers in any other context, they might be able to pick up strategies and learn new tricks. And I totally agree with the points made before. Reflection happens or is more effective when it's done in groups, when it's done collectively. So the idea of wholeheartedness and open-mindedness is pertinent here. Second pedagogically powerful strategy that we use is the feedback that we give on academic work and teaching practice. What we do is a reflective dialogue, and I think it's quite interesting how the idea of critical reflection is, I would say, is overused and is taken for granted. That is a very easy thing to do, and it's not. I think using models can be really useful, especially if we are, again, not sure what that really means. So this is my model based on Carol Rogers' study of Dewey. So we are looking at 3 levels of analysis here. So what we do with the trainees is we review the experiences, say after a teaching observation. We review the experiences, and then we together try and make sense of that experience. So this is when we need others. I would say the more perspectives, the more comprehensive the analysis is. So otherwise, it becomes an exercise what I call navel gazing, when people are just looking at their own ideas, and you have the voices in your head telling you how good you are or how bad you are. Then having a second voice there really helps to make sense of the experience. And adding another layer, I try to encourage trainees to synthesize. So, we have already mentioned the word nuggets. Give me that nugget of learning. What is it that you learned from this? And then how are you going to use that in your future practice? So I think, again, the idea of reflection as looking at the past, I think we also need to see it as I'm looking at the past with a view to inform my future. So this is the idea of feed forward, also fits in quite nicely here. And you see, and on this point, I mean, I would model what I would normally do with my trainees. So far, I've been talking about a model. I would say, okay, let's pause, stop, and be here and now with me and reflect. So far, what is it that you have been thinking about through this process? Are you making sense of anything new? What, can you articulate that learning, or can you articulate those ideas? And then what are you going to do with that information in the future? So it's again, it's an exercise of enabling that reflection through reflection. And for those colleagues who are new to reflection, I normally encourage them to use 2 models. When we have Schoen's idea of reflection in action and reflection in action. And the reflection in action is when we probably see the most prevalence of expertise. And it's the idea of, as I am doing, I am, again, in the here and now, present with what's happening with my audience, being aesthetic experience in that I'm using all my senses. And then if the unexpected happens, I am able to steer the situation in a new direction based on my experience on what I think should be done there. And then after that, we can, stop, and once the adrenaline is down, we can reflect on the action. And that's when we can use, again, the model I have just explained in terms of reviewing the experience, making sense of the experience, getting the nuggets of learning from that experience, and then thinking about how will that inform our future. And I would bring in there, again, because so far the exercise may be done individually, but I think, again, this is when the pedagogically powerful idea of bringing others to do the reflection with us is quite important. So Brookfields and the lenses that have already been mentioned is really, really effective. So I would, again, pay particular attention here to the idea of research, literature, trying to understand theory, what's behind these, what's out there. So there is a lot of problem solving in regards to trying to understand our own experiences and how that can help us to develop our pedagogies. And to summarize the key learning, the key points I wanted to bring across here, expertise in education is dual again. We need to keep nurturing both our subject knowledge and pedagogy. Second one is, I would say, more is more, diversifying your repertoire, acquiring, experiencing, exploring as many strategies and resources and trying them out with the students is a good idea. I know it can be daunting, but it sometimes is about, again, the idea of wholeheartedness is, I want to help you to learn. Let's try this and help me to evaluate it and make it better. So I think it's very much a dual collaborative process with the students. And then the third one is an absolute, but that would be my main advice for you, is observe others, especially from subject areas that are not yours. And this is something where I can bring in the idea of high stakes, because me and our trainees, see each other regularly and learn from each other. In a way, the process is developmental, which is different from when we have, I don't know, quality processes, audits, Ofsted, etc., which is very much high stakes. So this is when people do not feel that can, make a mistake, and they can basically play safe, and that creates a risk-averse culture. So being open-minded and being wholehearted in the process of observing and learning from others is quite powerful. And again, inviting others, and I have in terms of friend and an enemy, because it's not just those voices, the cheerleaders are helpful. Also, maybe somebody who brings a critical point. And I think sometimes it's the ability to entertain, the idea of that conflict, the idea that doesn't sit well with us, is quite important. So it's again, that's part of wholeheartedness. And the very last one is, if people are struggling with what does this mean, I think using models help. Like the model I have just explained, and I'm going to reinforce it. Experience, reflect, review the experience, make sense of that experience, involve others in that making sense of the experience, try to condense, distill that information into some key learning, then think about how will that inform your future. That's some of my references. I'm very interested in hearing from you. I know the chat is going on here, but if you want to email me or tweet me at La Morantesa, I would be very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leo. That was a very interesting presentation. I've had a couple of questions come to me that I'd like to pick up, and obviously there's an opportunity for anybody to ask a question. We've got a few moments for questions here. One, to just, if you could expand on your what you mean by the term wholeheartedness. If you could just kind of give us a broader definition of that concept, that would be very useful.
I think there is an idea of humbleness, being humble. In a way, I don't come across to my students as I got it all figured out. I'm actually saying I'm a learner, and I do encourage people to see teachers are learners. We're always learning. And again, that idea of, because he or she is an expert in the subject area, they got it all figured out. Sometimes people creates distance, I think. The students really love when you are, again, open and you are vulnerable, I think, in embracing that vulnerability and saying, but I'm here learning as well as you are. I think that level of connection, students embrace that and help to kind of to make the learning journey more involved, I would say, more engaging for them. I hope that answers the question.
Okay. That does, very, very interesting. And another point to try and summarize some of the discussion is there's some discussion around notions of reflection, and two issues have picked up. One is there's reflection not only in action and on action, but perhaps for action. Yes. So the idea of reflection for action, and then a second point on top of that is around reflection in action. Does that distract from experience and engaging in the process itself? When you take a step back, and that links to Helen's earlier point around flow, and so being in the moment of whether that is teaching or engaging in facilitation, but reflecting that may distract you from the actual action itself. I just wonder if you just your own reflections on those two points.
I think that happens, and again, it's embracing that as part of the process. I think the idea of every lesson has to be a perfect lesson has to be blurred, and also that there is one way to teach that is also false. There are many ways, there are many moments, and there are good moments and not so good moments, and it's embracing the mistake. I very much prepare my trainees on that, on resilience, on the emotional journey that learning is. And I think, again, acknowledging that learning is difficult, sometimes it hurts, and I say, well, it is supposed to hurt, and it's supposed to push you, because from that challenge and from the resilience, eventually something will come out and you will have the eureka moment, and that's quite satisfying. So I think that acknowledging the emotional journey of learning is very important. Flow, I like that word. Any other questions?
Thank you for that. And just one last question. There's some discussions around different perspectives, and it reminds me of work around just evidence-based practice and trying to think about the different perspectives. And we've talked about perspectives in terms of students and staff. I just wonder if there's one thing that seems to me is also the perspective of not only the science but local data. So just not just research data, research evidence, but actually, so that could be the opinions of people, but it could just be, we could look at retention data. You could, and I'm thinking about issues around different groups' attainment rates being different and the diversity and inclusion. That is also something to potentially, and just wondered your thoughts around including some level of data in terms of our reflective
Absolutely agree.
capability, not just
Absolutely agree.
lenses.
And that's in a way when I'm a bit wary when people think or judge themselves against, say, the NSS, and they think, well, I'm a bad teacher because the NSS didn't go so well. And sometimes that's one side of, set of data. We need to get other sets of data and compare them all and make it, as comprehensive as possible. So I would say, yeah, data is one of the voices in your head. Maybe you have another one, and you definitely need, again, a friend and an enemy helping you to make sense of that experience.
Debate and discussion, but I'm also
Yes,
aware of time. I wonder, there is a few moments. I wonder if any of the previous presenters would like to reflect on these opportunities. Feel free to come in at this point. If not, I'd like to draw this to a close and let us take a break for lunch, or as was mentioned earlier on, it may not be a lunch for everybody. Whatever time of day and whatever is appropriate within your local culture to do at this point, and what you would choose to do. There are obviously discussions going on. Please feel free to continue those discussions in this room during your lunch. There is other spaces beyond this session to engage in those discussions, so please feel free to go there. I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank all of the presenters for this really fascinating session, and I've just noticed Helen's put up a chat as well that Helen is going to talk at 12:30 about deliberate practice, so that actually gives an opportunity for a slight comfort break, and Helen's going to do her secret, or perhaps it's not so secret,